capacity is actually hit on those few days, the speeds are dropping down to what Don just showed. They're dropping below 30 miles an hour. Mm-hmm. So it strikes me that it's a theoretical capacity as opposed to an actual capacity. And fundamentally, my experience with hydrology models is similar to your experience with traffic models, except the gravity is slightly different on a traffic model. And one of the things with hydrology models is there has to be a lot of attention paid to the vetting of that model. And so, you know, in the early stages of the traffic model, we were frustrated because it didn't take topography and it didn't take road width in consideration. It appears that may have been taken into consideration, but it concerns me that it appears you're using a theoretical capacity on Highway 50 in terms of what triggers level of service F, which is different than the number of cars going down that road, which are causing 30-mile-an-hour traffic. And that's a disconnect that's significant, and that goes right to the question that you attempted to address. And with all respect, being in 30-mile-an-hour traffic, it doesn't really matter if it only happens once a week. It doesn't really matter if it's caused by an accident. It doesn't really matter when people expect that when the county general plan says level of service F is not acceptable, that they're not going to be stuck in 30-mile-an-hour traffic on a reasonably regular basis on their commute.
I did want to reassure you that the deficiency analysis is excluding the HOV, both the lane and the vehicles. It only looks at the general purpose lanes. So that was taken into account.
Is the HOV lane used in average traffic speed?
No.
The HOV lane, it's possible that the PEMS, did the PEMS data include the HOV lane?
No.
It was only looking at, because the PEMS is reported lane by lane, so it was excluding the HOV lane. But like I said, a 56-mile-an-hour average for those weekdays could include a couple times when it's lower than that, and a few times when it's higher than that. So you're right, there could be an accident, and there could be some days when it's lower, but that's not what we designed for. We designed for the typical condition. That's what we make investment decisions on.
Noah?
Just out of curiosity, especially for the state guys, who live in the state, do other jurisdictions, especially Folsom and Sacramento County, do they do this to themselves as well, or do they place a limit on themselves, level F, or is that not common in the state, or is it common?
Not in my experience, no.
So are we the ones that do it to ourselves?
In the District 3 area that I've worked with, yes.
And what is that? It sounds like level service is determined by different moving factors, but is there like a speed that you hit that determines level F? Especially this particular example, we're talking about the county line.
Well, I'll try to address this. Each jurisdiction does have level service policies in their general plan. Typically, they're not necessarily addressing the freeway system, the state highway system. Their concern is the local street system, the arterial collector street system, the major street system that they have in each jurisdiction. And they'll have levels of services, could be C, could be D, could be E. Some, they vary. They usually defer to the state when it comes to the level service policy that the state has. That's typical, and the state has that published in these transportation concept reports for each facility, so they can vary. Often their level service condition because it's hard for them to maintain, better than that. So that's, but it can vary. So, and conditions are different on a freeway. The way it's measured, again, it's density, and you see that a lot in the speeds. Is keeping speeds above 35 miles an hour is typically kind of the way of talking about this, for freeways, where it's completely different for an arterial, for a regular street system where you're controlled by traffic signals. It's the delay that you have at a traffic signal that's usually the basis for a level of service. How much delay on average do people experience to get through a traffic signal is often what's the level of service based on for a local street system. So in this particular case, the county has a local service policies directed at the freeway system. Many jurisdictions don't do that. They just let the state speak to the state highway system.
Is there a speed at which, on this particular point, that it turns to level F, like 50 miles an hour, 40 miles an hour? Is it?
Well, in general terms, it's getting to the density, but it can vary. But it's in the 30, 35 mile an hour speed that usually is where you suddenly go to low service F, and you can drop off very quickly below that because it doesn't take much to have you drop even below that very quickly. So usually if we talk, it's not the measure for level service, that's density. But from a speed standpoint, it's in that range.
Just one last question or observation, I guess, is it seems to me that a lot of that stretch of freeway, especially if it's going westbound, is more influenced by what Folsom is doing than by what we're doing. And I would assume Folsom's policies are totally different than ours on a freeway, correct? That they're not doing that to themselves. They probably don't care at all.
Caltrans sets, we do set those local service standards that we try to go move towards, as you said, but yeah, the local Folsom hasn't passed a single measure.
Right, so we're at the mercy then of another jurisdiction's policies on the freeway. They're not taxing themselves like we do to build the freeway bigger, right? They're waiting for you guys to do it at the state level, correct?
No, it's going to have to be local money put on the freeway system in order to get a significant capacity change, because Caltrans doesn't have the money to expand the system.
So that's not a high priority for Caltrans to do anything on the Folsom side of the line, correct?
Well, we will certainly be working with the locals in SACOG and others to try and push towards getting those funded, but it's not, we're not the ones in control of those funds to make that happen.
So in my opinion then, if I was a supervisor, I might go, hey, this section, because I think our supervisors can actually exempt sections of roads and things like that. If we're looking at a part of our county that we don't have control over, and we're deciding whether we're going to limit the growth in the whole county, it seems to me that's a pretty good spot to say, hey, maybe this is a spot where we should do this to ourselves because we don't have control over it. Because if it's backing up from the westbound, like when people get up over that hill, they get nervous. They slow down because there's a big hill right there, and it backs into our county. And we don't have any control over the hill. The last hill's not our hill. And so it seems to me maybe we should think about different policies than we have, and that it's kind of an artificial thing we've done to ourselves anyway, and maybe we should not do it to ourselves. And I know we can exempt it. And I just think it's a funny thing that we're doing to ourselves, and I think it's interesting that as professionals, you guys probably, I bet you think it's odd too. You think it's an odd thing.
Oh, yes. I have a couple of related questions. One is on a 25 mile per hour residential street, I'm assuming that 35 miles an hour would not be a level of service F. So does it vary with the road type?
Yeah, we're talking freeways. Most of our focus for this last discussion has been about Highway 50 near the county line. That's a freeway. It's totally different when you go and start talking about local service. And local service, again, is typically based on delay. If you occur at traffic signals and so forth, or real, delay or volumes that are on major streets. And local streets, it's capacity usually isn't the reason, the measure you want to talk about, because you're really talking about livability of that street. And really, if you get close to capacity on a local residential street, that's not what you want. So your policies in a local jurisdiction are not based upon level of service when you get down to a local residential street, typically.
Another question is, at what speed, say, would Highway 50 have maximum throughput? Would that be?
We get I'll
Or
answer this
what
one.
range?
Well, at level service E condition is when it's finally right about that condition is where you're putting the maximum amount of traffic through. You see that we're talking about level service E conditions in that last set of charts, and it got up close to 4,000 cars an hour in that particular location. It can vary by wherever, but as soon as you get up to level service F, the volume has to drop off because you've gone over the cliff and you've got to, you no longer can carry as much traffic. So maximum throughput is in the level service E range.
But it could be a variety of speeds. It could be 35 miles an hour, it could be 50.
Yeah, it could be 50, it could be much higher.
It really depends on how much the traffic fluctuates,
Right.
how drivers react. Actually, that's one of the things ramp metering does, is it spaces things out a little better so that you can get that more even flow. So the more even flow, it's kind of like a stream. If it's very smooth running steam, it can deliver. If it's very turbulent with a lot of rocks in it, you know, it can't deliver as much. The traffic's the same way. If we can smooth it out, you can actually have very high volume going, say, close to 50 miles an hour. If people are changing lanes and stuff, then you'll be down at 35 miles an hour. But that's about the range. You can be in a variety of ranges.
In the 35 to 50 mile an hour.
Something like that,
range,
yeah.
Depending how
Correct.
smooth the traffic flow is.
Right.
Correct. It isn't one speed, but it's in a range, but it's in that range.
Thank you.
You've mentioned two planned projects or two projects that would improve the level of service. One of them is the Silver Valley Interchange. And anyone who has traveled on White Rock Road close to the Silver Valley Interchange at 4:30 or 5 o'clock realize that that road is so heavily traveled now that it backs up from, I believe it's Mountain View with Target, where you can go into Target, to Post Street. All right. And this is before Folsom will have, not Folsom, but you'll have that interchange highway that'll come down White Rock Road, which will impact this area tremendous. It'll be astronomical, the amount of traffic that will come through. So I can't see how you're claiming that the Silver Valley Interchange has done anything to improve our traffic, our local traffic. The other project that you're speaking about is the one Saratoga, the extension of Saratoga. Now, from what I have seen, the county has approved a single lane going in each direction to be the extension of Saratoga. One lane in each direction to connect to Iron Point. The El Dorado Hills Area Planning Commission had recommended 2 lanes in each direction. And the county, and I believe it was DOT, said that it was not necessary. We really can't see how 1 lane in each direction is going to help traffic, is going to take any traffic off of Highway 50.
I believe that part of it is 2 lanes in the direction, is that right?
You have to talk louder. My other hearing aid, the battery died on.
I believe the project did get approved for a segment from County Line to
Wilson.
to 4 lanes.
Yeah.
From El Dorado Hills Boulevard connecting to Iron Point. Okay,
From-
1 lane in each direction.
No, what was approved by the board was that they're making it 2 lanes in each direction from Wilson to Iron Point Road.
From Wilson.
Yes.
And that's something that I hadn't heard before.
Yes. That
Okay.
was the condition of approval that the board put on the
So then
project.
you would have followed what the advisory planning commission had said.
Yes.
All right.
Well, at what point are they doing the 4 lanes? Are they starting?
When they start, from the very beginning. Because initially it was at the, I believe at the 100th,
Right.
but now it's at the start of the project.
All right. Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
So I think this group was hired initially to study the TIM program to determine what was met initially, because it says most of the
So Kittleson was hired to
most of the input was prior to 2015, or the last community input, according to their slide, was in 2015.
So there's 3 different groups here.
Right, but
So other than agency, which includes Caltrans and staff, we have Kimley Horn, who did the travel demand model, and they went up to 2010. 2010 to 2035, the model, is how they
No, I'm
rated it.
talking about this actual study.
She's talking to the slide that
Just
I
the
slide
main-
community input on the model.
Right.
That was mine. That was, I should clarify, that was specific to Kinley Horn's involvement, and that was just during the duration of the model development. So that didn't include separate agency output, because I think they've shown that slide before. It's quite a few more things when Dorado County did it on their own. We weren't involved with the TIMFI, so that's why the involvement cuts off there. So I think Mike would have to speak to whatever.
Well, this is what I'm trying to get to. So basically, that study was to help determine the traffic impact mitigation program?
No,
Yes.
that was an application, a potential application, but the study, the project that we were involved in specifically was to just develop a travel demand model.
It was just a tool that was used. It was developing a computer tool, and the public outreach on that lasted through 2014. Starting with our work, there's been a whole series of public outreach meetings of using the tool and coming up with the deficiencies and the capital improvement needs and the funding needs.
Okay, and then you mentioned that you include the general plan as part of that process, right? And also determining the level of service.
The general plan sets the policies of when a road has gone bad, basically.
Right.
When
So,
we need to look at an improvement.
when you were doing the primary study, we had a general plan that changed in December of 2015. So did you consider those changes in your results?
Yes, the updated general plan land use is used in the model.
At what point?
At
Because
the
most of
TIMFI.
this work, it looked like, was done prior to that.
So the travel demand model was done before that, but the CIP TIMFI update is still in process. But once the TGPA ZOU was adopted, that was taken into account.
The tool was developed, the land use that goes into it just looks like a big spreadsheet, and we can change that. And that was modified. It was modified from a base year of 2010 to a base year of 2015, and it was modified for the new general plan.
Okay.
So the tool was set up, but then during the TIMFI process in 2015, all of it was updated to the most current information, including the updated general plan.
So this meeting wasn't so much to say this is where we're at with all of that study, and this is where we're moving forward for the TIMFI program and the modeling, and this is more, because you started out saying this is to address, I think Measure E is actually, level of service in Measure E. Is that correct? Is why we're having this presentation?
Yes, that's correct.
And I'm a little nervous that Caltrans is officially part of the official presentation to have collaborated with this prior to presenting to the public, because then this is not a workshop. It's basically, it seems as you've made your analysis and your presentation, and I feel like we're missing a part of having that discussion with Caltrans that I still don't think it's been addressed on some of the issues that the public's having with the county. And I was hoping that they would kind of keep themselves separate from being actually in the presentation. Because I think there needs to be I can't find the exact word, but it's uncomfortable or awkward for me to see Caltrans actually in the presentation. And it's not so much being a workshop, I guess.
Well, I appreciate your concern. The reason Caltrans is here is that with all of our planning associated with the infrastructure, Caltrans is an integral part of our planning for the Highway 50 infrastructure. We pay TIMFIs into it, so that's why.
So most of this is feeling very staged. You brought up the letters that you bring up several times, and you take out one sentence out of letter that's worth 3 pages. And there's more information in those letters than just the quotes that you present. So this doesn't feel like a good public process.
Politically correct. I'm not concerned about that anymore. We sit here listening to a technical presentation about LOSF. And I take before I put them on the ground to make damn sure they work. Not always, but quite often. I was the last line of defense. But in the rest of my world of sociology, I've tried for years, and I heard a man who's here tonight that sat on the board at one time with me say, we can't build enough capacity on Highway 50. We need to change the sociology of when people want to go to work and where they want to live. And when we realize in this country that we can't all go to work at 8 o'clock in the morning, we will have enough highway capacity because we will stagger our work hours. And if we applied this same staged effort to our friends in SACOG and said, look, we need people in Sacramento to realize that if they're going to build high rises and bring us all into the inner city, that we need to change